Hello, my name is Joe Severino, and I'd like to congratulate everybody that won an award tonight. Full disclosure, I'm running for 10th District Congress. I'm a resident of Lake Forest, and I have 5 children that are in our schools. And outside of seeing a man beat a woman today in MMA and totally decimate her physically and emotionally, I thought I'd get through the day without seeing something so disgusting again until I saw who's the leader here that was outside whining to a woman and threatening to drag her out or have somebody escort her out with a 2-year-old child by her. You should exercise a little bit more emotional intelligence. If you want to lead, you do it. You should have tapped one of your female board members here to ask her to have a private conversation rather than embarrass and threaten her. So to start off on the right foot in the community, that's not the way to do it. I think it was appalling. And I'd like you, if you don't mind, to read the disclaimer on the mask box here, if you can read it.
Yeah, public participation is for you to interact, so I'm not going to read, but thank you so much for the offer.
Okay, well, I'll help you. It says the mask doesn't work. So why are you forcing students to wear something that starts
I'm sorry,
oxygen?
I'm going to have to just remind you of the fact that all those speaking are expected to act with respect and civility, and I would like you to...
That would include not interrupting me when I do speak. Thank you.
It is my job as the board president.
Masks do not work. Masks do not work. Please don't interrupt me. I'm on a time limit here. I'm asking every person sitting on this board to step down, and if not, I am going to personally organize a recall because I'm sick and tired of seeing pseudo-intellectuals, and I went to Harvard Business School, so I know something about leadership. I studied it with the foremost leaders on earth. To sit here and dictate to parents and try to be a first educator when your responsibility is secondary education. Our kids come to school with their morals intact, and they should go home with them. You're indoctrinating kids, and the behavior of this board is appalling. Thank you for your time.
Hi, this is Joe Severino. You're listening to the Lake Forest Podcast.
Welcome to the Lake Forest Podcast, a podcast about the lovely city of Lake Forest, featuring topics like local news, sports, music, people, and food. My name is Pete, and I also live in Lake Forest. Hey, we got a show sponsor for the show, NeuroNoodle. Hey, parents of athletes, your kids get a physical every year, right? We'll include a brain map so you have a baseline to compare it to in case something happens. It only takes 20 minutes to get the data you need to know if your athlete should get back on the field. Okay, one of the things we like to do here at the Lake Forest Podcast is to shed light on local people doing local good. Well, today we're joined by Joe Severino. He's running for Congress. Joe, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Pete.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Hey, give us a little background about yourself for the people who don't know you that just moved into Lake Forest. We get about 500 to 1,000 people that move in each year. Give us your background, Joe.
Well, I was one of the 500 to 1,000 that moved in about 2 years ago. I was a resident of Park Ridge. I actually bought my home to flip it that I currently reside in and fell in love with the community as well as the home. And I'm waiting for the renter to leave my previous home so I can put it on the market during a great time. And we are staying in Lake Forest.
That's awesome, Joe. So 2 years, Park Ridge. Where were you at before that?
It was Park Ridge 2 years ago.
So have you always been in Park Ridge? Like I grew up in the city and moved out to Lake Forest 3 years ago. So I'm relative to you too.
Oh, got it. So a little bit of my backstory. I actually grew up in Cicero, Illinois. And from Cicero, I moved to the west side of Chicago. And then I was in the West Loop for about maybe 12 years across from Harpo Studio there, which was infamous for a while. And then started having children, moved to Park Ridge, which was almost a culture shock for me. And then over to Park Ridge. So it was a nice introduction to suburban living, being a city guy. And I couldn't be any happier.
Well, this is, Lake Forest is a lot better in west part of Chicago. Where in West Chicago were you?
I was near like Taylor and Western. They call
Oh
it
man,
UIC Village now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely better off, Joe.
Yeah. It was a little rough growing up.
Well, it just goes to show that we appreciate Lake Forest more than most people.
Absolutely.
So Joe, I was watching the school board meeting the other day, and it was pretty passionate there at the end. And I saw you getting up to speak, and I'm like, wait a minute, who is this guy? I got to get to know him a little bit better. How did you decide that you wanted to run for Congress, and then you went to the school board elections? What was going on there? Can you give us a little flavor about what your interests are and what you stand for?
Certainly. So I'm a conservative running for Congress in the 10th district, opposing Brad Schneider, or at least the way it's district now, it's the 10th district. My interest was I owned a parking company that I sat at home while I had literally first line workers out there while COVID first started and everybody was scared to death, wiping their groceries with Clorox wipes, etc. And I was sitting at home caring about those individuals, thinking, it's almost unfair. I felt selfish sitting at home collecting checks while my staff was literally in harm's way. I decided to turn my company over to 3 hardest working minority employees. I walked away from it and I thought, what could I do that would better serve the community? In the interim, I was running a children's foundation, which I completely sponsored. I started about 7 or 8 years ago, where we would sponsor children to play youth sports, and then we'd create a great leadership opportunity for these children, and then ask the parents to make donations directly to a children's hospital. And one of them was football, so I'm very familiar with Noodle, I think you mentioned.
Yes.
So we provided all the baseline testing, everything for these kids, which was tremendous.
Oh, wow.
But the long and short of it is that, yeah. So the long and short of it is I wasn't able to do that anymore, actually be on the field with these kids, bring professional athletes together. We'd have kids that came from 95th and Stony or the West Side to play in Park Ridge and really put them in a team atmosphere where they could maybe meet kids they wouldn't ordinarily meet and learn a little bit more about each other's cultures and really build some friendships and let them look at life through a different lens. And it was just spectacular. So once they were prevented from doing that because of the COVID culture, I thought, what could I do in a greater sense? Now I have a little downtime. What could I do in a greater sense where I could actually go out there and serve the community in a greater capacity or in more of an aggregate way? And the idea was Congress. I thought I could couple my business sophistication, my life experience, being a father, my passion for the community and to serve, into one direction, and I kind of burned the bridge and I'm going for
it. So the 10th district, let's see, Bob Dole and Brad Schneider, they were going at it back and forth for a while there. You think it's time for Schneider to come back down again? You think he got his?
I absolutely do. I absolutely do. I think he's a fair weather candidate or congressman. They flip-flop back and forth because, in my estimation, neither one of them were remarkable. I think I can be a populist congressman. I think I can appeal to individuals on both sides of the aisle. I don't completely agree with agendas on either side. However, my core values are conservative. And I believe that people will find me to be authentic and genuine and believe I'll work hard for them. So I think I have an absolute chance of winning this race.
Now, going down the list on what the platform that you're running on, police reform. You don't want to defund the police, but you want to retrain the police. Can you tell us how you would do that?
Certainly. I think with training, I think I think under attack are two, well, actually 3 now. The most crucial and individuals in our communities, and that's the police officers, teachers, and nurses. I don't think that let's use teachers for one. Teachers are held under a scrutiny currently that's unfair. They no longer have the latitude to teach in a classroom, just fundamental academics. They're flooded with very radical agendas that they need to push rather than stick to, pencils and books, number one. And I think they're underpaid. I think the teachers union is a detriment to their success and autonomy in teaching. I think that the police should be making more money. I think the police, they should be retrained. We need more competent police. We don't need to, have them disappear from a community, but we do need to keep them in our community. I'm a big proponent for, a lot of these police officers are coaches and, driver's ed instructors, security guards. They do a lot. They're a big part of our community. And I think that if they were paid a little bit better and they retained a little bit more respect in their position of yesteryear while upholding the values that they should be exhibiting in the streets, I think that they could be a real blessing for our community rather than to defund them. I think that's the wrong direction to head it. I think that I think the criminal currently has a false sense of empowerment. I think that a very radical culture is causing them to believe that, they should have disrespect for the police, and it's winding up in, unnecessary deaths, arrests, etc. Things could be managed a lot differently, either lawfully or civilly, and it's to the detriment. People are being aggrieved. So I think they should be trained. I think they should, make a little bit more money, and also they should live in the neighborhood in which they work. So let's say a Lake Forest police officer, if you had an individual, let's say a shooting in Atlanta recently, no one knew who the individual was that wound up being shot. However, he really didn't pose a threat at the end of the day. They find out that, maybe he had mental illness, something. If you were dealing with members in your community, you would know who needed to be policed in what way and when you really needed to use force or intervene. So, I think the police right now are getting a bad rap, and they need all the support we can give them.
And what's your take? You were at the school board meeting, and the parents are pretty passionate. What was your take of all that? There was some grandstanding. There's two sides to everything. The truth is somewhere in between. And if you're going to run for Congress, how would you deal with that? I say post-scale. I don't say fiasco, but they shut everything down. Now you can't have a lot. You can't go to the board meetings anymore. It has to be Zoom. How would you treat that? How would you deal with that situation that you were at the other night?
What I ran into, Pete, was I was there to speak on behalf of a mask choice. There's individuals in the community, 80% of them, that feel it's not necessary for their children to wear a mask at school. However, there's 20% that believe their children should. And I firmly stand with them. If they believe that their children, that it's helping them, they should have that choice. However, on the other side, the 80% should also have the choice not to have to wear a mask. Subsequent to the meeting, it's been found to be a quarantine device by a Southern judge in Illinois. And that's basically what I was there to speak on. I wanted to speak on the legality of it being a governmental overreach. I think Pritzker is just on a tyrannical rampage right now with our rights. And what I wanted to do was inject an empathetic perspective as a father of 4 in the district to say, originally my research was going to be about the starvation of oxygen. In the interim, I found out that yawning was a sign of sympathy rather than a reminder of us biologically to preserve our species and to take in some oxygen. And I wanted to speak on a reasonable sense of why we should have the option. Well, prior to the meeting, I witnessed one of the school board members, and I was standing outside without a mask on, and I witnessed one of the school board members walk up to a woman who was kind of like a free-spirited hippie-ish kind of woman, very natural. She was with a 2-year-old child, and he approached her with the box of masks and said, you're going to be required to put a mask on. She said she didn't want to wear one. And he asked her again. She said, I have an exemption. He was a little forceful in the third approach and saying, you're going to need to put it on. And I intervened and I said, do you mind if, the fourth time, he said, if you don't put it on, I'm going to have you dragged out of here, is what he said. So I intervened and I said, excuse me, she's 6 feet away from everyone else. She's with a 2-year-old child. This might not be the proper way to approach her. Why don't you have her go in a different room, the viewing room, etc., and let's just settle down. Well, that wasn't good enough for him. He wanted the police officer to have her put on a mask. And as I was sitting in the viewing room, I offered to go sit in the viewing room with her. Originally, she thought it was a quarantine room, but when she realized it was just a viewing room as others were sitting, she was far more acceptable to the idea. So we went in the viewing room and I sat with her, and the entire time I was sitting there, I was watching the little child with their snack tray and thinking about how scared she was watching her mother be approached that way. And it just, the emotion of being a father just kind of built up. And that's why I went in there and said, it was disgusting the way, where are we as a society now where if somebody believes something different from you, they should be bullied in any way? We're losing civility and chivalry when we should be promoting one another in different ideas and not be at odds because of, this is being attached to or shackled to some political agenda or a political position. I don't look at it that way. I don't discriminate against anybody. Whatever they want to believe is fine with them. If they believe 2 masks work, I'm for it. Let them wear them, and nobody should be telling them what to do. But on the other side, I believe in fighting for my rights, and I think that came out when I addressed the board at the meeting.
Now, the lady that you saw, she was getting scolded outside of the venue, right?
Correct.
Or was she inside? Yeah, it was outside.
Yeah.
You don't have to wear a mask outside, do you?
Oh, no, she was outside of the room, but not outside of the 4 walls, we'll say.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Yeah. But in fairness to her, she was by herself. She had her child. She was literally 20 feet away from anyone. And I felt a little uncomfortable because he approached the woman. I was standing there. I'm a bigger guy, and I understand maybe I'm not the first selection, but he kind of acknowledged me to say hello with his eyes, but proceeded to approach her. I just thought to me, it seemed discriminatory on its face. And I just wasn't thrilled about it.
Any idea why it seems like the high school board meeting, there's just a bad vibe or juju versus the District 67 school board meeting? We had Taylor Cottom on the show a couple days ago, and he went to both, and there just seems to be a different attitude or a different juju. It's less antagonistic in the grade school versus the high school. Any idea why that is?
Certainly. So what occurred is, I think 67, this is my first experience with both boards. I went to a town hall, I spoke, and then I was kind of recruited by parents because I was running to voice my opinion because it seemed reasonable and fair, which I hope that's the way it's interpreted. However, I think that subsequent to the 115 meeting, 67 got a chance to look at the way you should never manage a board meeting and how you should treat people in a more civil way with more respect, particularly being parents. And I think they decided to manage it and navigate it a little differently. And it was managed very professionally. Although I don't know his name, the meeting with him saying that he was, scared of words or something, it's just ridiculous. It's a censoring tactic now to say, you're scared or uneasy. And, I just don't go for that. I'm not going to stymie my speech or what I have to say, or particularly speak on someone. As a matter of fact, I'm more apt to stay quiet regarding my own feelings than I am interjecting myself and others if I think something's going wrong. So the long and short of it was, I think they saw how ridiculous they looked in the first meeting. They paused and said, "You better handle it differently because we looked awful here." And the optics of it were awful. It gained national attention. I'm going to be on a national show in a few days. They want to speak about that as well as primarily my run, but speak about that also. And because people are fed up. The school board is one of the last bastions of being able to not to speak freely and not be censored. And now the Biden administration has come out and said that parents speaking at meetings are domestic terrorists. So now we're terrorists because we're looking out for the best interests of our children. And certainly, whether you're a Republican or Democrat or independent, libertarian, whatever you might be, we can all come together as parents to say that, there should always be an open forum for concerned parents to speak. And so to answer your question a little more directly, I think that 67 witnessed what 115 did improperly, and they ensured to extend a proper amount of respect and hear everyone, and it was a pleasure to do it. 115 steered their meeting in a way with the language preceding public comment to create an animosity there. And personally, when I go into a negotiation or even strategize, it's not from an antagonistic perspective. I usually want to go in there with a little bit of, honey to get my way in. That's just not the way they did it. So they kind of, they steered the meeting in the direction that it headed.
You had a magic wand, or they did. What do you think they could have done differently, Joe? Because it seemed like it was like us versus them is what it came down to. Sure,
they could have been less condescending. Certainly, when people spoke at the podium, they didn't need to be reminded to put their masks on. I very rarely wear a mask. I do it as a courtesy for individuals. I do it in a public forum if it's required. Other than that, I don't wear it. So they could have been more generous regarding. They showed that there's that they're not that there's a bias, and I think out of anything that occurred in that meeting, they showed how prevalent that bias was. So they could have held a more balanced meeting and not took a side. They're there to be independent. These are voters that see things differently than they do, and it could have been managed differently and more balanced.
So you're going up against Brad Schneider, and help me with his run. It was Bob Dole won, or Bob Dole beat him, and then Schneider beat him, and I don't know, went back and forth a couple of times. Compare yourself against Schneider. How are you different? Okay, you're Republican, he's Democrat. I think he's a financial guy or a CPA or something like that. How are you guys different? Why should we pick you over him?
Oh, well, I know they call him stay-at-home Brad, and I wouldn't be stay-at-home Joe. He's being sued currently for racial discrimination in his office. I hear people go to his offices, he's never there. They call the phone, he never answers. He's just a lazy congressman. And he's just a neutered individual that does not act on behalf of his constituents. He does what the Illinois or the Washington machine wants him to do, with no independent voice, and that's why we're in the mess we're in today. I will stand firmly in the face of righteousness. I don't mind taking arrows for the public, and my voice, I think, would resonate better in Washington and throughout the district than his.
And the 10th district, for the people who just move here and don't know, what does that cover?
It starts in parts of Glenview, and it stretches all the way to North Chicago, and then it travels west all the way to Mundelein. So it's a huge district. It's an incredibly liberal district. I'm always, told Joe this is going to be a tough run for you, but I truly believe I can beat Brad Schneider just based on his record. He's never passed a bit of legislation. recently, as some of the election irregularities are unfolding in Arizona, he put out or attempted to put out legislation stating that if anybody believed in election theft, that as people were already incarcerated for it, that they shouldn't sign his piece of legislation. He's not a uniter. He's not a leader. I heard he's literally never had a job in his life. He worked for his father-in-law. It didn't work out. He started doing some consulting, and I heard he was never even at that office. So I know his wife is doing very well. She's kind of the breadwinner, and I think he's drafted on her success, and he's not doing his job, and it's awful. It's affecting everybody. And because he's tying his kite to the sales of this radical culture, it's affecting us. Crime is up in the entire district. Carjacking, shootings, crime in North Chicago. This is Cook County politics that are just stretching into the suburbs. And that's why there's a mass exodus of Illinois. We were able to reap a little bit of the benefit, particularly in the North Shore, because people that live downtown and were frustrated with the leadership started stretching out into the suburbs. Well, if this doesn't get rectified now, they're just going to leave Illinois. And that will be devastating for those that remain. I want to remain. I love Illinois. I love growing up here. I love raising a family here, and I'm going to do whatever I can to help preserve the values of the reasonable voter in the district. And I'm looking forward to working hard out there.
And Schneider also got a tailwind, didn't they? Redo the boundaries or something? Yeah. Do you know anything what happened there?
Yeah, not particularly, but I do know that it was redistricted to favor his incumbency or to get him reelected, whatever it was. But I think I can kind of dispel the whole narrative that what I'm learning is that I heard a lot about the North Shore being very liberal. People are mistaking being a human for being liberal sometimes. Just because, you wear your heart on your sleeve, or because you really care about people, it doesn't mean you're liberal. I feel the same way. I share those values. However, we're being taxed to death. Inflation is up like crazy. The key inflation gauge reported by the Federal Reserve hits another 30-year high. They call it Bidenflation or blueflation. You go to Costco, you go to any of these big box retailers now. I mean, the food costs are soaring. Gas is up like crazy. This is all due to his supportive voting. And so we need to get him out of there. We need somebody to be somewhat of a compliance officer. Come in now, see what's wrong, and start repairing it. And that's what I believe. That's the need I could fill.
What's the best way for potential voters to learn a little bit more about you? Is it SeverinoForCongress.com?
Sure, they go to SeverinoForCongress.com, learn more about me, support my campaign. There's a donate button, $5, $10, $15, whatever you could afford to do. Look at it as an investment into your community. Or just reach out to me, send me an email. I've been having conversations with my people in the community. My social media is just growing every day. I think I'm striking a chord with a lot of the moms. I think they like my message of, where academia is off track. As a matter of fact, just today, I sent an email to one of the school board members. They're literally in Lake Forest High School and in Deer Path Middle School. They have a book called Naked, which, I mean, it's basically amounts to child porn. And I'm no prude by any stretch of the imagination. However, very objectively, this is something that no child should read. In addition, I have the book here on my desk. I'm embarrassed to show it to you. I was able to get it from one of the parents the other day that I'll be returning to the school. Some suggested I make a police report because it's literally child porn. It talks about a young child having oral sex with an adult. I mean, it's with full illustrations. And there was a kind of a viral video of a mother, I believe in Fairbanks or something. And that's exactly the book that we have. So we need a complete overhaul of reasonableness here. It's, I want to be let's say a community first, a parent first candidate that's going to, bring people together to do what's best on the side of our community, our families, our investments, our homes. I feel like everything's being decimated here, and there's a radical culture that's, impeding on the rights of, the average person in the community. And a lot of times they're so busy working that they don't even have a chance to realize what's going on in these schools.
Have you had a chance to speak with the new superintendent or the principal about that? That's
I
that book
haven't.
is-
I haven't.
that-
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. It was my email went to the principal. In fairness, I did hear them speak at a couple of board meetings. I have a little bit of hope that they're going to help right the ship somewhat.
Okay.
And I hope that they act fast. But that remains to be seen. So I wouldn't, they're so new. I wouldn't, throw scrutiny on them. But our eyes are definitely open, and we're going to be paying attention to what they do when they get this information.
Well, I'm sure Dr. Lennart wants to get. That's an interesting book. That's the first I've heard of it, Joe, and I don't know how you.
Graphic. It's so
I don't know
graphic and unbelievable.
Well, there's two sides to every story. I just can't imagine what the other side would be on that. But if anybody's listening out there and want to vouch for that book, I'd love to hear it. Joe,
I would publicly debate anyone regarding the necessity of this material in our schools. It's a grooming mechanism to victimize children, as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, Joe, on SeverinoForCongress.com/issues, your issues are free speech, police reform, equal rights, and immigration. Do you want to speak to each or one of those and how you would run things differently than Brad Schneider is?
Well, I would support our police. I think that's a big one. If we start taking back our community from a protective standpoint, where it's policed properly, I think we can. If you can't keep people safe in your community, you're already failing. So the number one thing we need to do when people are being carjacked in Deerfield, his actual hometown, at gas stations with long guns, and feel comfortable doing it, and it's repetitive, there's a problem. So number one, I think it's police reform, support the police, and compulsion of the criminal to feel that, they have the right to aggrieve these communities or individuals. So I think first and foremost, if you're failing, if you can't keep your community safe. So I think that advocating on behalf of the police to ensure that strict policies are in place where they interact more with the community and they police the communities or serve the communities in which they live. When I was growing up, there were the officer friendlies that would come to this school. You had personal relationships with them. I think we have to get back to that, and that would take the empowerment from the criminal away, and then start patrolling the town better.
Got it. Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show. Joe Severino for Congress. That's SeverinoForCongress.com. Thanks, Joe, for making it.
I enjoyed the time. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening to the Lake Forest Podcast. Please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and smash that like button on Facebook, Instagram, and follow us on Twitter. Let us know what you'd like to hear about any upcoming shows. Again, I'm Pete, and I can be reached at pete@lakeforestpodcast.com. The link will be in the podcast notes. On behalf of my co-host, Stu Walker, we thank you for listening, and we thank our Patreon supporters, Church of the Holy Spirit, Reverend Luke Back, and Matt A. Cue the band.